Hey, welcome to the Retread, the podcast where we track the journeys of students, professionals, and innovators shaping the future of the transportation industry. We are your hosts, Chris and Jason. This is Chris, I be Jason. And today we're kicking off our very first episode and have an exciting topic of leasing predominantly, but more so our topic is Will, and Will is here to talk about himself, his company, and what they do best in the industry. But before we dive in a little bit, let's talk about what you can expect from this podcast, which is, again, Retread. It's going to bring you for some fresh conversations about the industry, explore some past journeys and future innovations that keep Durham region moving. We'll bring on some expert guests who have some new perspectives and valuable insights, and Retread will be your go-to for staying ahead in transportation. So whether you're on the road, at the office, or in the field, this is for you. And hey, if you enjoy this episode, make sure to subscribe, share, and connect with us online. You can find additional resources by scanning the QR code linked into the show notes or visit drta.ca and sign up for our email newsletters at info@drta.ca. All right. That's all the technical fancy-dancy stuff. Let's get into the real reason why we're here and introduce
100%.
our first guest of this podcast, Mr. Will Sherman. Will, welcome to being our guest to this podcast.
Thank you first for making sure that I could be here. I really appreciate it. The invite was really nice. It's nice to see old friends and new.
For sure.
So what I do is I've been in the business for 23 years, which is scary because you look back and now I'm grayer than I was before and no longer, a lot more stuff has changed. Probably put a lot more weight on since then. But now I've was started off with Chrysler, moved my way into Mercedes, always doing the commercial van. So I did Sprinters mainly. So I started off actually at Dodge when it was a Sprinter back in 2003. Now I am moved over to Quest Automotive Leasing. So I was with Mercedes for 15 years. I left there because I wanted to be closer to home. I was driving an hour and a half each way and didn't want to be Uncle Dad to my two beautiful children. I do have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old at home, and I've been married for 11 years to my wife. Best friend, one of the fun things about me is we enjoy playing golf. I like playing golf, and I've convinced my wife to play golf with me. The only unfortunate thing is she's gotten a little bit better than me now. So she does hit from the reds, and I hit from the blues. But she does usually drive further than I do, which kind of pisses me off. But it's nice to have somebody that I can have fun with and play golf with.
100%.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, you mentioned you're now at Quest.
Yep.
So for those, new, obviously, maybe to this region, Durham region, and just in general, maybe walk us through what Quest does and what the specialty is in the industry.
Yeah, so we are a fleet management company. People used to usually call us leasing companies. We're not just that anymore. So we do lease vehicles and equipment. But with fleet management is we manage your assets. We help you actually through the whole cycle of the vehicle, and it's really saving time and money. That's how you deal with us. We buy directly from the manufacturer, so we are not doing used vehicles. We mainly do new. Most of our stuff is white metal, so your pickup trucks, your cargo vans, that sort of stuff. Your big trucks like what you would do with Rush. What we would do on our side is we buy directly from the manufacturer, save you about 10 to 15%. And that's just on the purchase. So we buy it right from General Motors or whoever, General Motors, Chrysler, Dodge, or Mercedes. We get the big incentives there. We pass those savings on to our customer. And we're national, so we're from coast to coast and operate in every single province. What we do is we work with companies like yourself, and we get the upfitting done. We get your signage on there where the truck shows up literally. So it's not like you just get a white
turnkey.
box. Yeah, it's turnkey.
Yeah.
So we
set everybody up, you take away their headaches. So when you deliver it, it's a finished product. It's not going here to going there to go. We get involved with that process. And sometimes it's like they got to get it to us before they get it plated and put on the road. Because once they get on the road, they just want to work it.
Exactly.
So the fact that you're providing a ready-to-work vehicle is huge.
Yeah, so that's just the first end of it. But with all that, we make sure that truck is there. And we're not just one specific model. That's the natural evolution to what I did, because I had the Sprinter where when you sold Mercedes, it was Sprinter or Metris, and that was really it.
Well, I remember wrapping the demos.
Yeah.
The demo, that was the first one, right?
Yeah.
I was like, everything was the first. Photoshopped everything and made these like,
and it's cool,
life-size enter and exit out of the doors. One side was floral, one side was like, I think construction coming
and
out.
you had the guy that was standing up.
And
so it
like,
actually showed
the doors
what side
were
it was.
closed. Yeah, and when you open the doors, which was like the most brilliant thing I'd ever seen, and even to this day I mention it, you had the lines with the measurements that showed where all the other competitors ended and yours extended past, which I thought was like the most, like, that's your visual representation to say something's this much larger, but for to open the door and go, this is where all the competitors that essentially want that type of vehicle end, and yours keeps going. I thought that was
also show the heights as well too.
yeah, because it was the extended height, and it was just like, I'm like, this is I always enjoyed. I still mention that being like probably one of the best marketing hands-on visual representation that you'd be putting in display, going like, it says answers all the questions.
So I guess
anything.
again, the natural evolution for me was now I could sell all that stuff. So it's not just Sprinter or Metris. Now and the thing is, you can only really get in with a Sprinter or a Metris. They may have like 4 or 5 of them in their fleet at max.
Right.
Now I can do an Isuzu. I can do a Chevy truck. I can do for their sales team as well too, or I can even do personal vehicles. Like I was looking at an Escalade. So I was looking at an Escalade where I was saving somebody about $20,000 from what they would get at the dealership to what I can do. And that's just an example of it. But so the next part of it is with leasing companies, we have a remarketing team. So everybody has something where they sell the vehicles at the end of the term. Like the dealership, the difference between us and the dealership is when you sell it to the dealership, and everybody always complains about it, oh, well, they're just going to sell it on their lot for that much more, and they're going to lowball you. They always do. What we do is instead we sell it on the auction. So I'll send it to an auction, and we'll get the maximum of eyes on it. We're not doing this to sell the vehicle to make money on it. We pass those savings on to you. So if I put a residual at $15,000, let's just take that as an example, and I sell it for $20,000, I give you that $5,000 back in difference, and you literally look at it like, wow, it's a perfect thing. It makes everything make sense for the whole side of this.
So you're literally making the money off the term.
That's
before and after it's
we
done.
make our money.
You're not
off
like getting it back and going, yeah, we just paid for this vehicle, and then we're just gonna.
Well, and I'm not trying to remarket it.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to remarket it. I'm not trying to resell it that way, right?
Right.
We also offer, again, the whole thing is saving you time and saving you money. We do a fleet analysis for all of our customers. So we go through actually their fleet. They'll show me a fleet list. We'll go through everything there and give them an analysis and say, hey, this is the stuff that we suggest you change. It's up to you. It's always, and that's another thing. We always leave it.
If you show this how much you're going to save when you do that.
Yeah. and we do an actual proper analysis.
Right.
But we actually, when we do this for you, it's all about saving you time and saving you money, but also it's your choice. So even when the remarketing side of it, if you want us to sell it, we can. But if you also want us to, if you want to release it at the end and you want to keep the vehicle because it's got low kilometers, keep it. If you want to buy it out, buy it out. If you want to give it to your employee that wants to go off, if you own a plumbing company and he wants to go off and do his own thing, he can buy that vehicle from you because maybe he has an emotional attachment to it. But again, it's all up to you.
Well, the reference to plumbing, because we have a company that's up near us and they're looking at weighing out those options specifically because they've got vans. And they were thinking like, okay, do we get rid of the vans and go to the pickup truck with the cabins on the back of it? And I've noticed some utility truck like doing that because then they can keep that bubble or whatever and they can take it off and just flip out the trucks. And then like the cabs, right? But I'm like, so you can transfer it to the person at the end of it.
If they want to own
if
the vehicle,
want to own it out, you can take off the cab, give it to the employee, not disposing it or whatever, and then life just keeps going. Yeah. That value.
And that's so then the last two aspects of this is a very long-winded thing I'm telling you, is we have fuel cards and we have telematics. This is all, the fuel cards are a way for you to save money at what you do, and we'll save you at the pumps. So we'll save you about 5 cents per liter on that sort of stuff. And with that stuff being said, you can use our card at all stations. It is a Shell card, but it's a Shell MasterCard. So it's a Navigator program where what you can do is you'll get discounts at Shell, but you can also go and do your maintenance with it. So if you go to Mr. Lube, you can use it there. If you go to the dealership, you can use it there. But you can also do it at a Petro if you need to go to the Petro and do it there. And
which is huge. That's what I was just saying. I'm like, a card that, I've got multiple sheets and marketing from them going like, who has the most locations around us? Who has this? Who has that? Like, where's the shells where I am? Oh, it's huge.
Well, the other thing
it
too
makes
is,
me want to roll my eyes in the back of my head, like, going, I don't want to deal with this.
Well,
right
and
now.
I had fuel cards before that was given to the dealership, and let's say you have a Petro card,
Right.
and you're somewhere where there's no Petro, but I'm out of fuel.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to expense it on my card, and then I go back, and my controller's like, "What the hell are you doing?
You got cards.
And you got a card, but then
Yeah.
and then you have that thing. Well, why didn't you fill up at the dealership? Why didn't you fill up at the closest one here?
Right.
That stuff's ridiculous. So we have that, and then the last thing is we have the telematics, which will curb your driver's behaviors to help you better get better fuel mileage. So it'll measure your hard braking. It'll measure your geofencing. So if you notice your guys are stopping
Does
off
it lower
at,
your insurance? Because
it will. It will.
because you're
yeah.
now.
I mean, check with your insurance provider first. I don't want to say that because I'm not. Yeah, please check with your insurance provider.
Yeah.
But with that sort of stuff, you can put geofences on there. So if the guys were to on the weekends, let's say on Saturdays.
Right.
So funny story is we do prospect calls. So I do 110 cold calls a week, and I called somebody up. And how I get my leads is I would see on the side of a truck, whatever that is, and my wife does it, or my brother does it, anybody does it, they'll take a picture, they send me a picture, and then I'll call the company up. One time, and the thing is, you'll always be like, hey, I saw one of your trucks on the road.
Right.
Well, I called the company up that was way out of the area. Like, I mean, Peterborough.
Right.
And the guy's like, well, where did you see my vehicle? I said, I saw it on 427 right by Sherway Gardens. And he's like, Sherway Gardens, when did you see this? And I'm like,
Right.
and everything's timestamped,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So my wife was out at Sherway Gardens, obviously at Golf Town, probably getting some
Getting some practice. Like,
like
she's
she's
perfecting
getting
the
balls that
drive.
are going that much further now. So she calls me up and says, hey, I got this, sends it over to me, and I have it timestamped. So
Right.
the guy's like, well, where did you see this? I said, well, I saw it out on a Saturday at like 3:30. He's like, can you send me that picture with a timestamp? And I'm like, sure. I call the guy back, and he's like, so turns out the employee
Right.
was taking the vehicle home, which he wasn't supposed to be,
Oops.
and he was doing work on the side
Oh.
in that truck
No.
and like you've got everything on there. You've got the logos and everything on there. So yeah, next time just make sure you don't take your employee, because it's guys like me that are going to take pictures of your vehicles and call in, and I'm ratting on you. I apologize.
You know how many people now are going to be taking pictures of everything branded out there? Like, that's great.
That's what I do.
That's-
So that's
yeah.
how I find. So when I make my calls, that's how we do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild. Well
Making
done.
notes on that.
Yeah. Well, and so like it's funny, like, part of bringing you in here, we want to have, chat and discussion on different things, leasing, financing was kind of the one topics.
Yeah.
I think you covered leasing versus financing as far as just like, but the benefits to a business. I mean, there's a reason to do both,
Yep.
clearly, right?
Yep.
And some guys will break up the fleet different ways. A lot of it is cash flow, tax play, and not in a a negative offshore way, but like, but taking advantage of the tax laws with regards to managing your cash flow in your business, right? Like, I think one thing that we both see from what we do, even though we structure our leases differently, is even something as simple as how the tax is applied on a lease versus a finance, right? Or versus a
Right.
purchase. I mean, maybe walk us through, from that side. You talked about all the benefits that you guys can do to support the product,
Yep.
maybe from the product itself. For those who don't know, like where's the lease versus a finance play, show up on a balance sheet, or what's the reason someone would want to look more to what you guys offer?
Right.
So I'd say first thing, the biggest thing is vehicles are no longer cheap. Like even a Dodge Caravan right now is 50 grand.
Oh my goodness.
Like 50 to 60
Yeah,
grand is
easily.
what you're getting a Caravan
Wow.
for.
Yeah.
Wild,
Right?
eh?
So it's no longer, financing seems to be something that everybody's looking at, or finding a way of a payment plan in a way, right?
Right.
The difference between dealing cash and financing. So when you do the cash and financing, it's almost the same thing. You're taking a cash price where you're doing the HST and everything is all in there. And if you're financing it, you're financing that HST as well too.
Right.
So with a lease, the biggest difference that is there with the Canadian government or anybody with lease is you only pay tax on the vehicle that you use. So if we residualize that vehicle, I'm going to give an example of, let's say we residualize that vehicle at 30%. Okay, so 70% of that vehicle you would be paying tax on, because you're going to pay tax on the monthly payments as they go out. So the payments are, let's say, $1,000 a month.
Right.
So you're going to pay tax on that $1,000 a month, right? When that vehicle finishes the end of the term, if you plan to purchase said vehicle, yes, you will pay your HST, and everything will work out the exact same way as financing it. But in our case, where most of ours, we cycle your vehicle, which I'll get into the reason why you would cycle your vehicle. But when you cycle your work vehicles, especially, you don't pay that tax on that, because then we sell it and you get the tax advantage on that. Again, check with your...
So that's the 30% at the end of it.
The 30% you're not actually paying
tax,
for
because
it.
you're
Yes.
selling it to someone else. They're going to cover the difference on it. You're saving it, walking into something newer.
Into
Presumably, that's the
something
idea,
brand
right?
new, right? With
Right.
full warranty and that sort of stuff on there, and no more downtime sitting at the dealerships
Right.
with a vehicle that's going to give you so much like maintenance issues, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is you being a business owner, the last thing you guys want, and think of your plumber that's got like 5 vehicles out there, or even
Right.
if one of those vehicles is down, he's no longer making any money. He's no longer out. You can't bill during that time while he's down. If one of your guys leaves here and has to sit at a dealership, you want to pay your guy to be at a dealership, sitting there,
Right.
like what, drinking their coffee and that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense, right? So I guess going back to this leasing and financing, leasing also works out better for the tax implications. Again, check with your tax accountant. I am not a CPA on that sort of stuff.
Well, those are the questions that I always ask, because when I just bought a car, do I lease or do I buy it? At the end of the day, my accountant was like, it's a wash. And I'm like, how? Because, you hear, but me working direct with the dealership versus working with you, it's a you have a whole different strategy.
Exactly.
On how that is structured versus like just looking at A and B. You're like, well, if we look at B, we can, as you said, like at the end of the term, I can walk into a new car and shave off 30% of my
And I guess kind
purchase.
of a shameless plug here as well too is with Quest, we work with anybody from one vehicle all the way up to...
That's huge.
You want to deal with the Rogers, if they want to call me up and ask them to do business with them, we can do business with you. But the thing is, we can go from one all the way up. So the guys that are the smaller fleets are getting the same discounts as those guys with the 50 to 60 to 100 vehicles, because we already negotiate it with Quest.
And that's huge. I even say that like our facility like caters to fleets, and that we went from 3,000 square feet. Now there's like 15,000 square feet.
It's
with
massive.
3 bays.
It's massive.
So I'm like, but the same thing when someone comes in and they've got one, some people will be like, oh, well, I just got one. I'm not, whatever, big enough for it. And I'm like, everybody here started with one. I go, I grew because they grew. And I go, that whole all ships rise, right? Like we've all kind of rise together. And I go, to facilitate their needs, I needed to keep growing, right? So
that's the crazy. I love
It's-
that, because you know what? There's so many businesses that I've dealt with in the past that started off with one guy, barely could get approved on that one first vehicle, and now they've got... I have a fleet out there of 50 vehicles,
Right.
Yeah.
and
It's
that guy was
tingling.
one guy that literally came in with his dad had to co-sign. He was 23 years old. His dad co-signed for it, and now he's in his 40s, and he's got like 50 vehicles on the road, and I see those vehicles, and you're so proud of it, because you're like, look, this guy's like busted his hump, and we've grown with him, right? And that's where Quest, like, we're successful when you're successful,
100%.
right?
Yeah. And that's
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
And that's always cool to see, to watch these guys grow, right? And that's the other joy of the different structured leases is, every company's going to have a bit of everything, and a lot of it is cash flow, right? And depends,
All about it.
you look at interest rates of where they've gone in the last handful of years, so if they're running off a line or something like that, that's how some companies have done before, right? Some OEMs will
an
offer
operating
lines based on how much they purchase, say on the commercial side, or you have a commercial line of credit to your business, or some of these guys are small enough it's their personal line of credit attached to their house, right? So all of a sudden now, their cost of borrowing off of that is huge. and sometimes you need to leave enough in there to keep the business running, but you need to acquire a vehicle. So hey, I don't want to finance this. I don't want to pull from my line against this one. So let me look at a different way to to maximize this cash flow. And then, but to your point on the back end, I find leasing works really well, especially for a company. As they get bigger, they end up having a fleet manager, or people in charge of assets, and they've got a structure and a process of how they cycle through the vehicles. But as they're growing, or as they're smaller, or if the vehicle is not their core focus, meaning plumbing's a great example, right? If
Just
you
a
have
means, like you got to get to where you got to go.
yeah,
It's
you've got a
not-
plumbing company that has 5 vans on the road. You've got 5 guys on the road doing everything. Most likely, the owner's probably in one of those vans as well,
Yeah.
right? You don't have a fleet manager there. You don't have a person who knows somebody at a dealership who has a tire guy, a fuel guy, a tow guy. You don't have all those guys until you need them, but then you don't have them, right? So
And then you have to start finding. You have to call out there.
Right.
And the thing is, I came from a fleet. Like, so, I'm a part of NAPA and AFLA. So both of these are the North American Fleet Association, and I'm also part of the American Fleet Association as well too, or leasing. So I don't know the actual acronym. I can look it up and we'll put it in the
That's
notes
okay.
here.
Yeah, for sure.
But the funny thing is, fleet, and this is something that went around everywhere, and I mean massive companies. Fleet is one of the things that's like passed on to you. Like, it's not anybody, like they ended up in it, like they didn't even mean to end up in it. Right. And it's something that you can be fleet and HR, or fleet and safety compliance. So it's like, it's not 100% their focus, even in massive companies, unless you're talking like, huge global companies. Sure. They're going to have that.
Yeah.
But if people of like
It's gonna be built
100
into it.
and under, usually they don't have somebody that maintains that fleet.
no,
And they
unless like the vehicle is their core business, like in trucking, right?
Yeah.
Like then you've got a fleet person.
You have
but
somebody-
Right.
But if it's a manufacturing company, if they produce things, if they're a service-related business,
Yep.
yeah, there's not to your point, it's not a fleet person. There's someone that gets the stickers every year. Basically, that's part of their job, right? Someone that
Insurance
takes
is
a
up
phone
to
call
date. Yep.
for the insurance. Someone that makes sure that any bills are paid relied. That probably just runs through ARA or AP anyways.
Yep.
But what you guys provide and what all these leasing services provide is that knowledge and that back end support for when something goes wrong. You make one phone call, and you either get help or you get direction.
Yeah.
From
And
people who
it's
know what they're
support.
doing.
Yeah, the support's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's my equipment based on having attacked that.
Well, the thing is,
You know
like,
you
we'll
can
make
call.
the calls. So we have sometimes where factory ordering is always the best way to do this, right? So ordering it, having some, but not everybody can be ready. You get into an accident with a vehicle, it can't be like, hey, wait 4 to 6 months to get a vehicle, right?
Right.
Yeah, you
So-
can have something on the lot.
But we have dealerships that we deal with as well too. So we have preferred fleet dealers across the country that we can deal with, and like so. I had a customer in Saskatchewan. If you need something in Saskatchewan, we literally call them up and say, "Hey,
Right.
this person needs this. Can you get this?"
We've got this much of a lead
Yep.
time before they get theirs in hand. You can.
And we still get like the incentives are already still given it. It's still not as good as
Right.
what you would get if you factory order it, but the difference will be maybe $500 to $1,000. So I'm always going
and
to
they
try
get it
and
now.
like I'm cheap, so I'm always going to try and find ways to save that
That's
money.
not a bad thing. It's
But
like
no, but like you want to be
knowing
cost
that
effective.
in hand when you're talking about saving.
Well, yeah, like
company
you're
money
always
on
trying
their
to
whole
find
fleet, like,
ways to
that's
like operate
huge.
that way,
Yeah,
right? Like you want to make
100%.
sure that somebody, as a business owner, like your bottom line is everything,
Right.
Yeah,
and
I've talked
especially in
to
the times that
fleets-
we're in now.
Well, yeah, like fleets that have one accident in their year, they're like, "There's my profit."
Yeah.
Yep. And again, if we're going back to what these companies are predominantly is, the vehicle is an expense to their business. It's usually not
Yeah.
driving revenue, right? It's a cost required to do their business. So, from a P&L side, anything you can do to bring that number
Something
down,
back.
right?
Yeah.
It just something they can either take more home or they can reinvest into the business in something else that actually may double or triple the revenue off of that dollar they spend into the business. So it's huge wherever you
Yeah,
can,
well, if you get
shave
that
some
money
costs.
back, you can either buy more equipment,
Right.
it's like, and then just
Hire
keep-
another person.
hire another person.
something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
like
something to
that's-
make the business grow.
Yeah.
That you can get some savings on by managing your fleet properly.
And especially with you being able to offer multiple sizes and versions of a vehicle. Like if somebody's like, we're getting a courier, we need a box truck, and then they're getting down in the sprinter size, so the immediate local small courier. It's like you can facilitate is it easy to bring on new vehicles under the same plan? Like, is
Of
it
course.
like,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, here's your package, and then you go in and you're like, oh, we got you now.
No, if
It's
you need to
5
change-
times more for this one.
Well, so the cool thing is working with all the different manufacturers.
Right.
I'll look every year and be like, hey, you know what?
got the-
You're running a Chevy right now, but
That's smart.
we always get, again, going back, it's always
Yeah.
the choices in the customer's hand.
For sure.
We'll always be like, hey, listen, this time I know you're running Chevys right now, and if you want to run Chevys, we can run a Chevy, but Ford's come up with some heavy incentives, or
Right. You're gonna get more back
Dodge
for
gets
it.
more incentives, and it's pretty much the same thing, give or take. The great thing is with the manufacturers now, like everybody's obviously going to have their mindset of which one's better and which one isn't.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the JD Power, all that sort of like the surveys that go out there, they're all within fractions of each other. There's not that big difference
Not
between
huge swing in
other.
them anymore.
Right.
There is something I want to bring up with you guys because we're talking about resell and all that sort of stuff and putting money back in a company. I met a religious group that has about 26,000 vehicles globally.
Wow.
Okay, and I met them in AFLA, and I asked them, hey, how do you guys manage your fleet? And they were so interested in it. They have 400 locations across the world, okay?
Of course they do.
400 missions across the world.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, every single one of those people have, they keep their vehicles for 18 months. So they buy directly from manufacturers and keep the vehicles for 16 to 18 months, and then they sell them.
Right.
They do everything on their own because of cost. And if you have cash, if you have the actual cash to do it, cash is always going to be king. You're not paying any interest on it.
Right.
So I know that being a leasing
okay.
company, it does
Right.
make sense.
Right.
Like sometimes it does make sense to pay cash if you have the capital to do it. And being a religious group, there's some things that they can't finance.
Right.
So the cool thing is they cycle their vehicles every 18 months. But the people that are their fleet managers within the companies, the fleet coordinators out of those 400 locations, are volunteers. And they change every 18 months.
Oh my goodness.
So imagine retraining somebody
Oh my
over
goodness.
and over again.
How is that cost effective?
It is, you know how it's cost effective is they sell these vehicles at 18 months. They don't pay tax. They pay no sales tax at all.
Okay.
And they get the highest incentives that you can. They're so big that that one manufacturer, and they confirmed at this table that I was at, will make vehicles. So their key is they send people out on missions. Okay, so this is a part of the religious thing. They send you out on missions. They go knock on doors and spread the word of God. Right. I'm sorry to bring up God in a podcast, but
No,
hey,
it's relevant.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
So they will go out and do. They'll send out 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. So first thing, big red flag. You got 18-year-old, 19-year-olds
Driving
brand new vehicles.
in driving vehicles that cannot get insurance. So they have to self-insure
right.
as well too, right?
I.e.
So they're self-insuring, plus they're sending these people out there, 18 to 19 years old, running
Right.
around in brand new vehicles. So one of the key things that they have to have is every safety feature you can get has to be on that vehicle. Like, I mean, everything, making sure your seatbelt's
So you know
on.
insurance has got the GPSs in it, so it's saying like, hey, driver number 3.0, like
Exactly.
braking hard today 8 times. Like, that's-
Exactly. And you'll get all that updates.
Wow.
So what they do is they're so big that this manufacturer, you can really, if you want all the safety features, you have to go to the highest end trim.
Right.
They make specific vehicles for these people at the lowest end trim with the highest equipment. So they specifically make vehicles for them.
Wild.
Because in Canada alone, they're buying 1,000 vehicles.
Of course.
In the States alone, they're buying 16,000 vehicles.
Jeez.
Especially in the southern states is where they're very big in, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just thought I would
Holy
bring that
buying
up.
power.
That's
like,
wild.
Well, the buying power is massive. Like every manufacturer that was there at the table came over to us. Like I think all of them came over to us at least once. And I'm like, you guys are the cool guys. I'm gonna hang out with you guys, right? Everybody knows you guys.
Well, you got everyone in your kitchen. Like
Yeah.
you literally can. They all want you to
Yeah.
know. You know, they say who you are to them because it's like they want you to.
And
pick them and say, what's the
selling-
incentives?
So with that many vehicles, I did the math. They're selling about 1,600 vehicles a month and buying 1,600
Wow.
vehicles a month globally, mind you.
Right,
But
but
you're
I'm-
still selling 1,600 vehicles and buying 1,600 vehicles a month.
Like
I don't even want to
it's a
know.
paperwork nightmare.
It is. It is. It is.
Yeah, like logistically, like there's a
Yeah.
whole room of people going, it's that time of year again, right? Like
But
we're camping down for a week.
It's funny when you say size, and I think that's where companies like yourself play a bigger factor, because you'll get companies, even someone who's got the 50 trucks, right? Who are big. They come to someone like ourselves, like at a dealership level. We go to the OEM to get discounting based on who they are, and size matters, right? That's how they structure it. What I always find interesting, we've done some stuff together where I'd say, okay, if this customer come walking through the door as who they are, and we got our pricing discount, it was level X. But because I'm quoting you and the volume that you guys buy versus them, even if they could be one of those guys with 50 trucks in a fleet, you have more than 50 trucks under your ownership, and that equates to you have better buying power. Mm-hmm. So even when you structure it and whatever, cover your cost to run and do what you need to do, there is usually still a net savings to the customer of running something, through you or through some sort of leasing arm with somebody, than sometimes doing it on their own, right? Even if they are the best negotiator in the world, at some point, all the OEMs only discount to certain levels based on the customer. And it's nothing to do with the customer personally or their business. It's usually just size and opportunity of business with
behind them.
Yeah, it's the opportunity of business, right? So a company like yourself, there's continually, opportunities there. So they're open to trying to do more business with yourself, where the guy has 10 trucks and he's buying 10 trucks. That's all he's getting. Still a great deal, and he'll still get a phenomenal price. But that's, you talk about size, and there's an example with them, right? They're going right to the OEM. They're bypassing everybody in the room there. Right. But because they're big enough, they can. But it would speak to the same thing that you guys could potentially do, and what we can do with OEMs, and say, hey, we need this certain spec, right? Or we need, and they're buying this much. You can move the needle a little bit differently with size, and that's the benefit of partnering with someone like yourself and what you guys do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for no matter the size.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's cool.
That is cool.
So one thing that's always interesting when we're talking in general, it always comes up, and this is high, but it'd be interesting to get your take on it. And, I think you're a key candidate from your personal side too. But, with regards to your industry and what you're seeing, EV is a buzzword. Some days it's a good buzzword. Some days it's a bad buzzword.
It's a trending word.
But you're making 110 calls a week. You're talking to people. You're seeing where people are thinking of going. What are you seeing in your world as far as zero emissions and the interest in adding it to a commercial fleet?
So I personally drive an EV. I love my car. It is so much fun to drive. The speed that you're going to get out of it, the savings you're going to get out of that. But it's not for everybody. Right. I think ICE still has a big play in it, and EV is going to take a little while to catch up to that point. And whether, I think because of the IZ rebates going away in Canada, it all is going to depend on what the manufacturers are going to do, like the OEMs. Are they going to kick in on this sort of stuff? Also, I guess the other biggest question is what about range? At 200, 300 kilometers, that's not really going to help your normal person. Now, if we're in Europe, sure, there's not that much. I mean, in 200 kilometers, you can almost go through a country. Where here, 200 kilometers may get you from here to Burlington.
Yeah. That gets me to work.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have to charge if I'm going here, I gotta plug in. I'm not gonna make it back. Which is why when we were talking earlier, I switched and I got 500 kilometers in mine, and I'm like, that was huge. The range was massive.
But it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I get 550 to 600 on mine, and that's fine. You're starting to see, and the range was the biggest problem. So one of the main things and really hurt commercial was the Ford Transit. So the Ford Transit E-Transit came out, and it was getting, the range that they were posting was 250. You were getting people coming back and saying 130 to 140 because it's the range, right?
Yeah.
That means from top to bottom. Now, driving EVs, it needs to be at 80% is where you should be charging. It's like your phone. You shouldn't really charge your phone 100% every time. Yeah. It doesn't matter with the phone because some people like myself, I get a new phone every 2 or 3 years, right? And I think everybody does.
burn it up.
Right, but
max it out.
I don't care because it goes back. Now, when you're talking resale value and that's the biggest thing, we're gonna have to worry about. The resale values are plummeting on this sort of stuff. Like, I know my car that I have is, I'm gonna be upside down on that for a little while, which is okay. It's a nice car to be upside down in, so I enjoy driving it.
And you're enjoying the savings.
I am.
Like, the loss is like.
I don't even know what a gas station is anymore. I just go there to get lotto tickets and get a car wash.
So I'm driving a rental. They gave me, my car's gone in for like a service thing, and I dropped it off, and they're like, we'll put you in a rental. And I've been 8 months with the EV, and you know, when it comes to savings and something, I did the math and I go, okay, I'm back to fuel, so it's $90 every 2 days. It's $180 in the week.
That's a lot.
And I'm like, and I'm doing that, and that's not including the weekend gas. That's just my Monday to Friday. And in that, I kind of said, okay, before when I was paying fuel, you know, there's a savings, but really, what is it? So I have an auto transfer that comes out every 2 weeks to say, this is the amount I would have spent on gas.
Wow, really?
And I move it into savings. So then at the end of the year, I can actually say, this is what I saved, right?
Wow.
Instead of just saying, the OEM or, like a Tesla, when you type it in, I could type in my fuel savings. It's like, you're going to save $10,000, $9,939 if you da-da-da, right? So get it pretty accurate. Like I'll get a good range or good, I guess, information tracking and see actually what the savings are on I know the fuel goes up and down, right? So I just picked a hard number to equate, but
I think
a few thousand already.
People are interested in the EVs.
Oh, 100%.
It still is something. There are fleets that are saying, like, again, going to that American Fleet Association.
Yeah.
They said that there's a lot of fleets out there that want to be zero emissions by the time you hit. But one of them said zero emissions by 2025, end of 2025. They want, like, this fleet specifically wanted to be that, and we're talking a 300 unit fleet. Like, we're not
those
talking.
Are the ones that need to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to have to do it. Someone's going to jump in.
But that's going to help out with your infrastructure. So that's the other thing. The infrastructure, it's terrible. It's not that
Commercially,
great.
it's terrible.
It is. It is. Because where are you, like, when these Tesla trucks come out that they're talking about, the semis, where are they charging?
I mean, they have to come home, right? That's the thing. The commercial infrastructure we're seeing right now isn't there. And I think what range is the challenge has been, and to get range, you have to throw at weight. Basically, it's batteries. You can go as far as you want. It's just how much you want to carry, right? Like that's the thing. I think that semi-Tesla, when it's got reverse engineered, I think they're saying 500 miles is what they can get. I think that chassis is like 30,000 pounds, right? Roughly. For that,
so you're going to have more
truck,
wear and tear on the roads.
right? So there's the other part, right? So that's the part I think
100%.
that people haven't really looked into as well is, the roads are maintained, a lot of it, through fuel tax.
Yeah.
Right? So if everyone starts going to EV, that fuel tax goes away. The government at some point will recognize that, hey, we're not getting money from bucket A. We need to create a new bucket called bucket B to get our money back to pay for the roads, because these vehicles are inherently heavier.
Some of the states had already...
Right, you're going to register your vehicle. You can see it coming where it's going to be like, okay, you're registering your EV vehicle for this year. Great. How many miles you put on last year?
Right.
Okay, it's X amount per kilometer. Okay, that's your EV tax to help pay for the roads. Yeah, we're not catching it as that.
No, it'll be like
Isn't that what Trudeau brought as a carbon tax?
Well, that's so in the States, that's what they were doing. So the grocery getters were switching to EV.
Yep.
They were the ones that drove the least amount on the roads.
Yep.
They've averaged it out. It's almost like the same mentality behind a subscription to like a Spotify or a music service.
Yep.
Same mentality. The people that listened to the least amount of something or drove the least amount, they're going to average out saying, we need to make up X dollar now because we've got X vehicles on the road. We're going to tax people that would never use this much fuel. Say it's like an extra $300 or whatever it is. And now they're hitting the guys that are doing the least amount of driving. And even when they're selling the EVs, I'm like, they're hitting the closest distance, which doesn't justify, like, I'm driving an hour.
Yeah.
I'm saving $800 a month. Like, that's
huge.
That's actually like undercutting.
Right.
So I bought a brand new car, even if that's $600, I was already paying $800 plus in fuel.
Just fuel alone.
Fuel alone, plus the payment of a car.
Yep. And the wear and tear, all the
on the
other
wear
things.
and the wear and tear, all the other expenses that go with it. Like it's like they're selling it wrong. Like
So
it's like
I was doing 1,200. I was paying 1,200 in fuel a month.
right.
So when I did the monthly payments,
Yeah.
and I looked
Yeah.
at it, I was
It's-
looking at a certain car that I wanted, and then I
Yep.
looked at the other one. I'm like, wait a second. If I take that $1,200, I'm getting this. Now it was a good way to justify it to my wife, and that's why I got the car that I got.
It's more money for golfing.
Right.
But yeah, that's right. More money for golfing.
We can golf 2 more times this
Yeah,
month.
yeah, baby, we can go more.
We can get a
But
membership.
going back to the EVs, it's just
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
the infrastructure needs to be there. One of the things that was talked about was roads that would charge, and they've
Yeah.
already started that
Yeah.
now in the States, and I think in Utah there was some roads out there. It's interesting, like that's the stuff that's gonna make people get over this range anxiety, because I have had range anxiety once or
100%.
twice.
There's
It's
no
scary.
book on that. I bought the car. When I bought my car, I slept in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I went to the gas station, first time charging kind of thing. I knew I didn't have enough charge to get home. I didn't tell my wife that I just switched out my vehicle for an EV. It's a surprise. And then I was like, I got out to work late tonight. She didn't know, and I couldn't charge, so I plugged into a 110 in here, thinking I might get a little bit out because I didn't have an account set up. I'm like, I don't carry credit cards, so when I went to the thing, it was like, oh, here's an app. So I drove around. While I was driving around trying to find charging stations, I was using up energy.
whatever you left.
Right? So I was like, I'm not going to, because you can type, you just put the address where you're going and it'll say it's in the minus
need to
when
charge.
you get.
Yeah.
So I plugged it in overnight, think in the morning. So I slept in the car with the seats down. The worst sleep ever. I slept in the car.
Yeah,
I was
but
like,
you deserved it.
I
Like,
deserved
you
it. I'm
deserved
like,
it.
there's a lesson here.
I think it's almost you need to have, so when I first got the Tesla, I was charging at the charging outlets.
Right.
And it's $35 to charge there. So I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense now. And we had the charger, it was gonna get done at the house, but
Yeah.
I mean, when I got it, like getting a contractor was like
Right.
nobody would call you back because it was so
Right.
busy. Now, mind you, the business is different, so
Right.
they'll call you back like right away if you call them. But as far as going back to the Tesla, the charging stuff, this is the stuff that people just need to be educated on a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah, I
we
think
walked out of
commercially-
it and they were like, you should.
But it's
tell.
the time frame, right? Like
Yeah.
from the commercial side, I think we're seeing the initial uptick is definitely in the final mile. Anyone that comes home every night doesn't have to go too far, right? So guys, say right now we're in a GTA, so it's people within the GTA going into the GTA. You're not running, to Windsor. You're not running to Montreal. Right. The corridor, the infrastructure is not there commercially to support it at this time. And that may change, but in the interim, even the infrastructure locally is hard because the draw these things take, right? If you're going to put on, if you keep it small, and that's where we've seen success, right? The Sprinters, the Bolts, there's different vehicles, the Bright Drops, there's different ones that have done well and are still above water as a business.
Right.
There's others that have faltered, unfortunately, within Canada. And then you get to the larger commercial ones, and that's where you're seeing the slower integration just because of the charging requirements, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a fleet of 10 straight trucks and you want to EV all 10 of those, 2 years maybe to get that infrastructure in place. You got to go to your municipality. They got to work with the region. You got to make sure there's enough draw coming to your facility. Make sure your neighbor already doesn't have a whole bunch that's creating a huge
Well, they got to
draw.
check the power going to your
Power
to the
to your
building.
facility, and then you got to get the cost to get that done, installed, all that.
Is the grid ready
Is
for
the
it?
grid ready? Like, there's so many
and that's,
features.
So like
to
I
it.
sat
Yeah.
in a group panel with another couple of organizations that were doing this stuff, and they were hoping that the larger 300s, like those fleets, are essentially going to pay for the grid. The whole idea is the fleet is going to say, how you got fueling trucks going around, you're going to have your own charging station at your facility. It's going to be, so that is going to support your fleet. You're going to be an independent supporting your own fleet. And by the way, you're also going to be able to support the branches outside your fleet.
Okay.
That's the idea. So like they're building like power units that are like
Right.
cookie cut. You got land that you can drop it in, like how you see solar panels and all this stuff and everything. You'll have these sections,
Mini
that are-
substations.
mini substations that they put in. It can power X amount, and now these, like your fleet, will be completely self-efficient on its own dime. Like you'll be fueling yourself.
Right.
So at the cost of it, and then they had plans out where it'd be like this would be your 5-year, it'd be warranted while it's getting built out. There's a buyback on the battery because you can recycle them and be used to other things. So there is a process that they're trying to implement and get out there because of the fear of everything. But at the same time, they'll go, by the way, it's going to cost you $100,000 to do. And then fleets are like, whoa, we're like tracking pennies right now.
And to drop
Like,
100K is a lot.
To
of
drop
money.
100K that you're telling me I'm going to get back. Like, I know we're talking about our Tesla, you know, and a Chevy
But
Equinox.
that's our personal vehicle, right?
Personal, and that's $1,000 a month. That you know, 12 G's a year. But that's just us. But I'm like, if you know, maybe do the math, you know, reverse engineer that on one truck traveling X amount, knowing that you can now fuel it internally without having to go to anybody outside your business. Maybe there is a value to that, but you're not going to see it right away.
But also the speculation you have to worry about is, so if that happens, all of a sudden now is the electricity rate's going to go up.
Right.
So then does it
sure.
make sense, right? Because right now it costs me $100 a month to do it.
Right.
That's it costs me
and that-
$100.
for sure it is.
What if that
'cause-
goes up to $300-400? Now it's kind of like,
because
well,
everyone's
should I
going to
go-
be jumping into it. And I can even see it now. Like when I go to a machine, depending on whose brand is it, because it hasn't, they haven't said that, like seaports. So this is the one seaport. Everything's got to be a seaport. They've got so many versions of charging, and different times of the day. I can go out and it'll tell me what rate I'm now charging my vehicle on. Now it's like doing dishes, putting the dishwasher on at night.
Exactly.
I'm just going
So
out
that's
at
why I
midnight
charge
to
at
charge
night.
my.
I always charge my
Same.
car like I have it scheduled there.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say is, and I think the last of the big manufacturers that got into the EV space was actually General Motors. Like they started off with the Bolt, and then they kind of went away, and they were like the slowest to come to it. But the Equinox is the number one sold. They sell more EVs than anybody else.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, they have a big. But the cool thing is now you're starting to see stuff like the new Escalade that's coming out. Now, mind you, it's a $200,000 vehicle. It's very expensive, but you're getting 800-kilometer range. The new Equinox, or sorry, not the new Equinox, the new Silverado EV is
huge.
getting 750-kilometer range.
Wild.
So when you're getting 750 and 1,000, like we're going to get up to 1,000 at one point.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you're there, then that stuff makes sense for a business owner to run these things. Now, mind you, you're not going to put your tools in the back of an Escalade, but you can put your tools in the back of an EV Silverado, or
100%.
and you can work. You can work and you can do your job.
And they're testing trailers that have batteries in them. They've got the RV market's got them. So it's like, so when you're using your EV truck to pull a trailer that's hooked to it, it has battery and it's got generated same that's in the vehicle. So the percentage, it's irrelevant.
That's insane.
It's completely irrelevant.
And then the refrigeration too. So there's already companies out there that are putting reefers in the back of these trucks.
Yeah.
And it's taking very little draw. I mean, mind you, haven't seen it yet, but somebody's told me that you can do a very little draws coming off that battery.
Nice.
Yeah. It's I don't know.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. It's huge. I do find it interesting when you mentioned GM specifically, how quickly they got involved. And then you see what's happening into the States right now, and now this huge disruption to the automotive, big three. Yeah. And I'm like, it's kind of like one of these where it's like, you got your Teslas who basically decimated. I don't know if you ever watched like the death of the electric car and then the rise of the electric car. They're both like documentaries.
I've watched the rise. I watched the death.
So watch the rise.
Okay.
It'll give you tingles because it's literally Elon Musk with his last dollar going into the market and tossing it out there, so thinking like somebody's got to like the EV concept. And him going from $1 and completely bankrupt to having
what he is now.
Wild.
And it's literally the flip of a switch.
Forget the political view. What he is now.
He
changed this.
Yeah.
And
now
really,
you see like GM being the last to get into it. It's almost like the Apple move where it's like everybody makes something. They just did it better.
Right.
And all of a sudden GM's took everything, listened, and then finally tweaked until they got something that has the range. It was the range anxiety. And now within 2 years, they're doubling what. And then you see the Tesla market going, like his car is getting more expensive. GM's being able to bring it down. My Chevy Equinox, everyone's like, oh, he must have paid like $80,000 for that. I'm like, no.
Like 40?
I'm like, I was driving a Jeep Wrangler before that. I traded it in, and this is less than what my Jeep Wrangler was. Like
having the fleets they want to look at, like that vehicle's perfect.
Yeah.
I think we still need to find a small cargo van because
Right.
the Sprinter's
Oh.
there, or that
If they did like the Dodge Caravan style that catered to, like, we see a ton of that van being used for
the Savannah side,
commercial-
like I think, like
Savannah's,
let's go
like-
back. I still am an Astro van. I think the
Yeah.
Astro van, that is the van. Like
No,
that is the
it's-
perfect
for
van.
sure.
The Metris had that
you
for
can
a
fleet
very.
that out and then
Oh,
put.
that's perfect. I think if you
Yeah.
rebadge that same like the same Safari slash Astro
Oh,
van
there's a
and put
huge
like
market
just
for that.
you could literally take that shell,
Yeah.
put an electric motor in there and give it 600-kilometer range, and
Oh.
we could get that
done.
out for 60 grand.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
People would
And
be
people will
buying
take it.
that. Oh, for sure. With the amount of
It's the badge.
seed.
It's the
Yeah.
badge and everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
lots to look forward to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that the best way to sum kind of that topic up is that it's just ever evolving, right?
Oh,
Like it's being
that's
tweaked. There's a game leader today. It'll be a different one tomorrow. Two guys will emerge. One guy will disappear.
Yeah.
But it's ever evolving, and I think it's ever evolving because the market is not certain on what they need yet, right? Like everyone's still trying to figure that out. Yes, we need range, but then we need capacity. Like it's great if this, if you get to a commercial van that can go 1,000 kilometers on a charge, but if it can only carry X amount of payload, then maybe it doesn't work, right? Like it works for some, but not for all. So it's still getting massaged, but I look at it almost like the phones, right? I use iPhone as example, kind of as a Tesla, right? We're to iPhone, I don't know, 18, 19, whatever number we're at now, right? When iPhone 4 came out, everyone jumped on it, and then the 5, we jumped on it, right? But so much has changed since then, and I think the EV is the same thing too, right? It's like the tech is always the best it is at the time, but it's also ever evolving, right? So
It says 30% every year.
yeah, so it'll
Is
just
what
keep
it's
getting
gonna,
better.
what it's gonna, like, even for me, I got the 2024, and they're like, "Hey, we're putting out 2025, and there's like already 30% increase." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Of course there is."
Yeah,
but you have to jump in. Like I look at it as I'm helping support that
yep,
advancement. Like, you're the early adopter. Like the ones that got on Tesla early, obviously they know there's a better one. I've got friends that had them, and they're like, they swear by it.
I do. I love mine.
Yeah,
I love mine.
like
I
the
my car.
best decision they've ever made. Like
well, I think when it comes to those decisions, especially EV with the technology just moving so quick, is and you and I, what we do in our roles is basically helping walk the customer through what's out there, what's available, where we are today, what we might know what's coming in the future, but you don't always know. And then as a business owner, you make the best decision you can make with the information you have available at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And if this is what's available for you as a platform to work with, and it makes sense, and the ROI you can make sense of, then you go forward. Because if you keep waiting, every time you keep waiting, the next one's better, the next one's better, and you'll never get in.
You'll never get in.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe you get
It's
in
like
when
the
the
real estate
infrastructure
market.
is easier to get in. Yeah. No
It's
different.
it's like the real estate market.
Same
You can
thing,
sit on the
right?
little sidelines, but you got to get in.
Yeah.
You gotta
But
get in.
tech's
The real
not
estate's
gonna.
gonna-
Yeah, it's not
real
going to
estate's
stay
gonna make
still.
you money.
Like, it's not going to stay still. It's not going to be static. So at some point, if you're going to get in, you got to figure out what's the jumping point. And which
Right.
jumping point in our world is what's the product I'm going to start with and dip my toe in. Maybe it is a bright drop because that's kind of they got it figured out. Maybe I'll wait and get into something bigger later when that's kind of all figured itself out. But understanding what you need in the market and then just making the best educated decision you can make.
Yeah, or gas.
Yeah, or guess. Look, we don't want to hold you here more.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We've had a great chat. I think we've gone through and had a cool discussion on a little bit of what you guys do as a business, how you support customers in this industry, and ways that people can work with you and structure certain their deals and manage their fleet accordingly, and how they can leverage technology with you guys as well, right? So it's a good all around situation there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me. That was it really meant.
It's exciting.
I'm glad that I was like the first inaugural person you got here.
The guinea pig.
The guinea pig.
guinea pig.
The guinea pig.
Nice. Well, we'll wrap up our guinea pig experiment of this very first episode of Retread. So thanks so much for joining us today. Those listening, a huge thank to Will for sharing us your insights on everything you know and bring to the industry. Hope everyone enjoyed today's conversation. So don't forget to subscribe, share, and connect with us online. And remember, the future of transportation is being written today. So let's keep driving forward together. And since this is new, we're always encouraging listener engagement, encouraging feedback, right? We want to know what you think of this episode. Let us know. Send us an email, info@drta.ca. And this episode of Retread is brought to you by your DRTA family and is made possible by listeners like you. And so for those who don't know and want to know a little bit more about what the DRTA is, obviously the website is DRTA.ca, but for a quick little summary here, founded back in 2013, the DRTA connects, educates, and supports transportation professionals through charitable events and educational seminars. As a nonprofit, we raised over $50,000 for local charities like the Ability Center, Bereaved Families of Ontario Durham Chapter, the Denise House, Grandview Kids, and Durham Outlook St. Vincent Kitchen. Our next event, if you're listening to this live, will be an MTO event in April, so check the website for all the details for that. We have our charity golf tournament will be June 3rd, and our first ever Trucking for a Cause event is on September 27th at the Orono Fairgrounds. You can expect convoys from Woodstock and Brockville, a local market, fleet job fair, a kids zone, live music, and it wouldn't be a truck show without big trucks on display. The real-life Tonka toys will be there for you to see them all. So hopefully we'll see you then if you're listening to this live. If not, and you missed it, check it next year. But as always, check out DRTA.ca, and thanks for listening with us.